What must be done in order to create a Horcrux? What kind of sacrifice has to be made in order to split a soul? Follow along in this magical Harry Potter what if as we see the drastic steps that Tom Riddle had to take to his immortality. Tom Riddle had spent his time at Hogwarts wisely. He did his classwork on time, even early sometimes, and made sure to keep all of his professors on his good side. And in doing so, he was able to do nearly whatever he wanted. He had been made a prefect this year, which helped give him more freedom around the school. No one would question him when he walked around the school at night. This came in great use as to what he had learned over the summer holiday. Last term, Tom was finally able to learn a bit about his family's history. Tom Riddle Sr., his father, was a muggle from a wealthy family from Little Hangleton. His mother, Mirab Gaunt, came from one of the few pure-blood families left in the wizarding world. The House of Gaunt was known for being direct descendants of Salazar Slytherin and had taken the habit of marrying their own cousins in order to keep the bloodline pure and ensure that the traits of Slytherin passed on. The once wealthy family, obsessed with status and their pure bloodline, had squandered their riches long before the last of the bloodline had been born. Tom Riddle came to learn that other than himself, there was one remaining Gaunt, his mother's brother Morphin Gaunt. Over the summer between his 4th and 5th term, Tom made a visit to Little Hangleton in search of what was left of the House of Gaunt. Morphin lived in what looked to be a small shack at the edge of town, far different from the Riddle Manor that he had passed on his way through town. Tom searched for answers from Morphin, learning of how his mother could bother wasting her time with some muggle that had no interest in her to begin with. Mirab Gaunt had been infatuated with Tom Riddle, a handsome and rich muggle since the first time she saw him in town. And once her brother and father had been taken to Azkaban, there was no one there to stop her from going after him. She created a love potion and enchanted Riddle to fall in love with her. This caused him to run away from home, and the two found themselves in London. It was only a couple months into their marriage that Mirab became pregnant. She released Tom Riddle Sr. from his love potion in the hopes that he had truly fallen in love with her, or at the very least, he would own his duty to his unborn child and stay. The opposite was true, however. Tom, upon seeing the life he had been tricked into, he left Mirab and immediately returned home to his parents' manor. The Muggle family simply pretended that his year's absence did not exist, and that the Gaunt family was never involved in the town's history. Mirab found herself alone in London and in need of a place for her and her child. It was New Year's Eve when she staggered up the steps of an orphanage just moments from giving birth. She had nothing left to her name, having sold everything she could in exchange for gold to live. One of the workers of the orphanage was able to help Mirab deliver her baby. However, she knew that the mother was in no shape to carry on. She wouldn't even be able to make it to a doctor. Before Mirab died, she was able to inform the orphanage of her son's name. Tom, after his father, Marvolo after her own father, and Riddle for the boy's surname. As Tom continued to talk to his uncle, he grew more interested in the Gaunts than he had for his mother's story. Being a descendant from Salazar Slytherin was quite the status booster. He was no longer some half-blood from an orphanage, but a relative of one of the most notable wizards in Hogwarts history. This explained his ability to speak with snakes, just as Salazar Slytherin had done generations before. Morphin also told him of several secret chambers that Salazar had left in the school for his descendants to find. A scriptorium, where the founder of Hogwarts kept his personal study and books on magic that would never be found in the library. And another one called the Chamber of Secrets, which was home to the Serpent of Slytherin, a great beast that Salazar had kept in the school. Tom pressed for the location of the chambers, intrigued with the beast that only the heir of Slytherin could control. Tom Marvolo Riddle was determined to find both the scriptorium and the Chamber of Secrets. His 5th year began, and he was sure to keep himself involved with his studies for the first couple of months, as he didn't want to raise any suspicion to his professors. Had Dumbledore or Dippet known that he had gone to see Morphin Gaunt, they both would have kept a much closer watch of his movements. As he was making his patrols of the dungeons one October night, he found the wall that the scriptorium was supposed to be hidden behind. Morphin Gaunt warned Tom not to enter the scriptorium alone. or he would risk being trapped inside. Tom ordered the assistance of a house elf and entered the scriptorium. The first door to get past was simple, as it unlocked with anything said in Parseltongue, something that Tom had learned he could do at a young age. The second barrier was a series of puzzles with a viper statue that would attack if you put in the wrong combination. And the final door is what his uncle had warned him about. The door was sculpted with tortured faces. Tom knew exactly why he needed a partner with him in the chamber. Without hesitation, he turned to the house elf that he had brought with him and cast the Cruciatus curse. The house elf's tortured screams filled the room, and as if the screams were the password, the door opened. Tom Riddle entered into what was the personal study for Salazar Slytherin. Shelves filled with books and research, a desk with parchment still scattered across it. Tom sent the house elf on its way, but not before wiping the elf's memory. With the knowledge of the scriptorium and now having easy access to the room, Riddle decided to use this room for his own research and plans to make himself more powerful. He could bring a name to himself instead of being shackled with the name of his Muggle father and the pathetic end of the House of Gaunt. He would make himself the greatest sorcerer in the world. After a few months of working through plans and ideas to make himself stronger and more powerful, Tom came across a book that talked of immortality, keeping himself alive forever, a way that he could live on, even if his body was destroyed. Though the book did not go on to explain how to accomplish this, it only left a name, a Horcrux. He searched through many other books in the scriptorium in hopes of finding an explanation as to what a Horcrux actually was and how he could create one himself. He had to assume that Salazar Slytherin didn't have any further notes on the subject because the founder already knew how to create one. Tom had to learn where he could learn more about these Horcruxes, and his first place to start would be the restricted section. On his next night of patrol as a prefect, he let himself into the restricted section. It took him several nights before he found the book that would actually serve him any purpose. Secrets of the Darkest Arts. This book explained in perfect detail as to what Tom Riddle would have to do in order to create a Horcrux. First, he would have to damage his soul in a dark way that cannot be redeemable. To kill someone with complete intention and no regret. This could not be a kill of self-defense, accident, or an act of mercy. The intentional death of another that would leave the soul darkened. Then, with a special incantation, he could divide his soul and take the damaged piece from himself and place it into an object to hold on to. As long as the object remained intact, his soul would be safe and live on, even if his body was destroyed. It also spelled out the steps of regaining a body should the original be destroyed, and all that was left was the piece of soul that was hidden away. The elixir of life, a rather simple potion should he be able to locate and get his hands on the Philosopher's Stone. An item that was often treated like a myth, and wherever it did exist, would be heavily protected. There was also a combination of potions he could use. Rudimentary body potion that would give him a temporary form, weak and pitiful, but a body nonetheless. Followed by a regeneration potion. This would be a trickier potion to create due to the ingredients needed. However, Tom was confident in his ability to acquire them should the necessity arise. The book also outlined the ability to regain his soul piece in his own body, should he have deep regret and remorse for the dark deeds that he had done. Though this information was not relevant to Tom Riddle, as he knew that he would not hold any regret. The book did leave him with a question. How many Horcruxes could he create? With the knowledge he had learned, he knew exactly which professor would give him the answers he needed without alerting other teachers of Hogwarts. Even if he doubted Tom's intentions, he would hope and assume that their discussion was purely hypothetical. After a gathering of students that Professor Slughorn hosted, Tom waited for his fellow students to leave in order to talk to the professor. "Look sharp, Tom. You don't want to miss curfew." Slughorn laughed at his own quip. "Professor, I was hoping that I could ask you about a rare piece of magic." Tom kept his voice calm, continuing when the teacher motioned for him to do so. "You see, I was in the restricted section the other day, and I found a piece of magic I didn't quite understand. It's, as I understand, a Horcrux." Slughorn was stunned, taking a moment before answering the student. "This is very dark magic, Tom. What are you doing in that part of the restricted section?" "I found it by mistake. I was looking for something for an essay." Tom lied, knowing that the professor wouldn't push for more answers. "I think your question is better suited for Professor Merrythought, as this is more her area of expertise." Slughorn tried to dodge the question. "Well, Professor Merrythought and I don't exactly see eye to eye. I wouldn't want her to misunderstand. She doesn't understand me quite like you do." Slughorn nodded to himself. "Well, a Horcrux takes a piece of one's soul and tucks it away into an object, keeping it safe in the case that one's body is destroyed. However, souls are not meant to be split, and it requires an incredibly dark act to do such a thing. So, if the soul lives on, would it not be better to have more than one? 7 is a powerful number." Tom pushed further. 7? Slughorn felt uneasy. "This is all hypothetical, right, Tom? To rip the soul into 7 pieces, unspeakable." That was all that Tom needed. It was confirmation that he could in fact create more than one Horcrux. He would just need to pick items that would be safe to store his soul into, and choose who would be the sacrifice for this accomplishment. "Of course, Professor, all hypothetical. The book I found just did not explain it thoroughly." With that, Tom left the professor feeling uneasy and confused. It was time to put the plan into action. He would need to find an item to contain his soul, something that he knew he would keep safe and no one would think of destroying it. Then there was also the task of killing someone in order to damage the soul. That would be the more difficult aspect of this plan. He was only 16 and still had the trace on him. Any spell that he used would be tracked by the Ministry. It wouldn't take them long to discover that he had been the one to commit a murder inside Hogwarts. He considered a potion, but Professor Slughorn would be suspicious if any of his ingredients were to go missing. After the conversation they had, Tom would have to steer clear of the potions professor for some time. Riddle then remembered the other secret chamber within the school. It was said to be home of a monster, a great serpent that could only be controlled by Salazar Slytherin or an heir. He had learned of the snake months ago when he was going through the information in the scriptorium. A basilisk, a large snake that could grow up to 50 feet and that had been living in the chamber since Salazar Slytherin had brought it to the school. The beast could be controlled by a Slytherin heir and could kill just by looking into its eyes. This would leave his wand free of spells and keep suspicions from him. With the Muggle name of Riddle, few would realize that he was in fact an heir of Slytherin, and it helped that he had only learned this recently. He would be able to deny knowledge of his relations to the Slytherins and the Gaunts. Tom had to make sure he could control the basilisk before he attempted to murder anyone with it. So he then started his preparations. He found the entrance to the chamber, a sink with the beast symbol on the faucet in the girls' second-floor bathroom. Using Parseltongue, Tom commanded the secret entrance to open. The sink then slid back, and a trapdoor emerged. Without hesitation, Riddle entered the passage, a steep downward slide into a corridor that had to be at least 2 or 3 floors below where he had started. He then walked along a long corridor, the floor full of bones from rodents and other creatures that the snake could snack on, though the crunch of the bones didn't faze Tom. There was another door, with 2 large snakes carved into the stone. The chamber and the snake would be behind this door. Pushing open the door, Tom found that the hallway continued a bit longer, lined with stone statues of snakes, and opened up into a large room that had a large carving into the side of the wall. An image of Salazar Slytherin covered the back wall, and his open mouth was an entrance to what looked to be the piping system of Hogwarts. The room was grand, large enough to hold a 50-foot snake. He began to speak Parseltongue again, summoning the beast to come out of its hiding place. The creature followed his instructions with ease. The snake poured out of the mouth of Salazar Slytherin, circling around Tom Riddle until it had fully come out the pipe. Once it had settled, it waited for instructions from its new master. Tom Riddle knew he had done it. He was one step closer to creating his first Horcrux. His first order to the snake was to go after Muggleborns in the school, giving it the name of a Gryffindor boy that was in the year above him. With its command, the snake slithered off. While practicing his commands with the basilisk, Tom returned to the research of which item to choose. He was keeping notes and looking for something that no one would suspect to be such a powerful item and something that people wouldn't think to destroy if found. In just a few short months, he had 5 students in the hospital wing, petrified from the basilisk's gaze. He was a bit disappointed that they had not received the direct stare of the creature, and so they did not die. However, the school was terrified. The Muggleborns were considering returning home as it didn't take them long to realize only Muggleborns were being attacked. Tom would be able to rid the school of those unworthy to learn magic. He was reviewing his notes when a thought struck him. His diary, the very book that he was keeping his notes to creating a Horcrux. The school had seen him carrying this book around all year. It had his name on it, so if lost or stolen, it would be returned to him. And who would ever think that a notebook could be so dangerous? His diary would hold the piece of his soul. Now all he needed was a person to kill. The school year was coming to an end, and Tom was running out of time. He needed to finish this before the school year was over, and he knew he had to be there when the murder occurred in order to split his soul. It was late one night. Curfew was just a few minutes away, so the halls were practically empty. Riddle was walking through the second-floor corridor towards the bathroom when he saw a Ravenclaw girl in her 3rd year. She ran past him and into the bathroom, crying, something she had done before as she was frequently picked on by the other students. And it just so happened that she was also a Muggleborn. Tom looked up and down the corridor, ensuring that no one was around to watch him follow Myrtle Warren into the bathroom. She had locked herself into the second-to-last stall, and Tom could hear her crying. He stood at the entrance to the chamber, first using the password to open the trap door, and then commanding the basilisk to kill the 3rd year. Tom placed his diary on the floor of the lavatory and had his wand ready. He could hear the snake grow closer, and at the same moment, the Ravenclaw was realizing that she was not alone in the bathroom. Riddle took a step back as the basilisk finished making its way up the pipe. There was a click as Myrtle unlocked her stall door. "Go, oh!" she had begun to shout, but when her eyes met those of the basilisk, everything stopped. Tom felt as if things were moving in slow motion, an accomplished smile on his face as he watched her body crumble to the ground. With its task completed, the snake disappeared back into the chamber and the entrance hid itself away once again. Riddle waved his wand over the diary that still lay on the floor. Cinditur Anima. It felt like something had sliced through his being, a sharp pain jolting through every nerve that he had. The pain was unexpected and caused him to drop to the ground, but he bit his tongue and made sure he didn't make a noise, just in case someone was just outside the bathroom. As the pain began to fade, and Tom pushed himself from the ground, he saw the diary had a soft glow to it that was beginning to fade. He didn't feel quite whole anymore, like a piece of him was missing. It was there, in his diary. Tom Riddle had successfully created his first Horcrux, first of many. He quickly made his way back to his common room, knowing that he couldn't be the one to discover the dead Ravenclaw, as that would draw more suspicion to him. By the next morning, someone had found Myrtle, and news of her death spread through the entire school before students could make it down to breakfast. The monster that had just been petrifying students before has now killed someone, and rumors of the school's closure began to spread as well. For the first time since building this plan, Tom grew worried. He didn't want to go back to the orphanage, and if the school closes, then he would have no choice. Tom overheard teachers talk of moving the body from the hospital wing later that night, so the 6 students would not have to be there with their dead classmate. Another plan came to Tom that would pass the blame to someone else. That night, while he was patrolling for his prefect duties, he ensured that he would be in the path of the professors moving Myrtle Warren. "Riddle," Professor Dumbledore stopped to stand with the student. "What are you doing here?" "I had to see if the rumors were true," Tom lied with ease. "I'm afraid they are, Tom." Professor, they wouldn't really close Hogwarts, would they? I haven't a home to go to. The Slytherin faked his worry. I'm afraid Professor Dippet may not have a choice. Dumbledore kept his emotions steady, something that he was an expert at. If the person behind the murder was caught, if this all stopped, then the school could remain open, Tom questioned. Is there something that you wish to tell me? No, Professor. Tom shook his head, but he could see that the professor was growing suspicious of him. I'll go back to my dorm. The next part would be easy. He knew that a Gryffindor had recently acquired an acromantula. If he could let the creature loose, he would be able to blame the death on the spider and the other student. It would be too dangerous to keep the Chamber of Secrets open for the time being. So Riddle sealed the chamber until the next heir of Slytherin could open it. And just as he had planned, another student took the blame for the death of Myrtle Warren. Rubeus Hagrid. After his acromantula had been seen running through the school and eventually escaping to the Forbidden Forest, he had been expelled from Hogwarts and the Ministry snapped his wand for such a reckless creature being brought into the school. He managed to avoid Azkaban thanks to Dumbledore's interference, but Tom did not care if the half-giant went to jail or not. All that mattered is that the school was to remain open, and Tom Riddle was left blameless. It was time for him to plan the next Horcrux. Creating a Horcrux and splitting your soul takes a deed that damages the soul permanently, darkening your soul by taking the life of another. That's our theory. The magical world of Harry Potter has many untold stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe to see what magical journey we go on next.